What's up, Mindsetters? It is 4 o'clock on a Monday afternoon. Grade 10s, you should know by now that it is maths for you. I am Looney, and joining me in studio is Natasha. How are you, Natasha?
I'm very well, Looney. Great to be here with the grade 10s, once again looking at finance.
Great. So guys, you heard it. We're doing finance, growth, and decay, part 2, whatever that means. Yes. So guys, don't forget to hit us up on Twitter at LearnExtra. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/LearnExtra. Remember, you can download the show notes, the videos, the schedules. Check out all the awesome products we have available here at Mindset. And we want to urge you guys to urge your teachers to go onto our website, guys, learnextra.co.za, and apply. Go to the jobs and apply for all the products that we have and all the different things that we're doing here at Mindset. Urge all your teachers to check under jobs and submit their applications. We've got amazing things for the teachers as well. We're not just focusing on you Mindsetters, because Team Mindset is like a huge community. So remember, guys, we also have Curio. So go on to Curio and answer all those 5 questions. And throughout the show, maybe like close to the end, Natasha will check them out, give you guys clues, and help you with the ones that you got wrong. So with all that said, Natasha, let's have the lesson.
All right, Looney, just building on from your Curio, guys, remember that your code, you do need a code to answer the grade 10 questions, and your code today is M10. Right, Looney?
Yes, M10. M10, guys, is your code. So answer all those 5 questions, and Natasha will help you close to the end of the show.
All right, great. So today we're going to be looking at finance, and remember, we are carrying on from last week's lesson. So if you're feeling a bit lost with the compound interest and you can't remember the formulae, it's really because you probably missed out on last week's show. So last week we just covered the basics. We looked at what the compound interest formula was, what the simple interest formula was, and straightforward applications. Today what we're going to do is we're going to look at things that a lot of you have trouble with. And most of the questions that we get are always about these 2 things. The one thing being using timelines, and you use timelines to represent your transactions when there's lots and lots of transactions happening, like withdrawals and deposits at different points in the year. A lot of people tend to get confused. So we're going to be looking at timelines, and we're also going to be looking at how a changing interest rate affects the amount either invested or borrowed. Okay. So the first thing is, what is a timeline? Well, a timeline is really just a visual summary. So everything that's in your question is summarized into a timeline. Okay, so really what we're doing in a timeline is summarizing financial information, and that will then help us to work out the calculation. It's especially useful in questions, as I said before, where we have several transactions. So we're looking at deposits, withdrawals, changing interest rates, and all those not so nice kind of things. That's when we're going to use a timeline. Okay, let me show you what a timeline looks like. All right, so it really is, as the name says, it is a line. Okay, and when we draw the line, what we do is we represent the information that we've been given at the beginning of the question at time 0. So we start at time 0 and we go all the way to time n. Okay, time n being some of the information you'll be given, like 7 years, 6 years, and so on. Time n will be the point in time that you've been asked to calculate a certain financial question. So the little subscript beneath the T, you can see in the first one, I've got T subscript 0. That tells you the point that you are in on the timeline. Okay, on the top of these, you'll then mark your amount. So for example, if you had started with 1,000 Rand being deposited, you'll put that at time 0, and maybe something was happening at time 3, maybe another 1,000 Rand was added. You'd put that on at time 3, and then maybe something happened at time 5. Okay, for example, if you had a withdrawal, we depict that on the timeline. So what you would do, as I said, is literally read your question, see what information you've been given at the different points in time, then use your timeline to mark off that given information. Okay, we always start the timeline at time 0, which is the present time, and then we then take it to time n, which is the point in the question where they've asked you for some answer. Okay, so the best way to illustrate the timeline or the use of the timeline is to look at the first question. Right, so this is the first example. we are told that a student opens a savings account with a deposit of 1,000 Rand. 3 years later, he adds another 2,000 Rand. And then 2 years after the second deposit, he makes a third deposit of 4,000 Rand. They say calculate the total amount in the savings account after 6 years if the interest rate is 8.5% compounded annually. Now guys, if you look at this question, you'll agree there's so much happening. I mean, he starts with a deposit of 1,000, he then waits for another 3 years, he puts in another 2,000 Rand, then 3 years after that, he makes another deposit of 4,000 Rand. So there's so much going on, and if you were just trying to do all of this without the use of some sort of aid, like the timeline, it can become really confusing. So let's use that timeline and let's try and put down all the information that we have from this question. Okay, so we're going to draw the timeline. All right. And just use the information that we have been given. So there we go, there's my timeline. And we start, remember, as I said, we start from time naught. Time naught is the present point in time. And if you have a look at what's happening at the present point in time, they say he opens a savings account with a deposit of 1,000 Rand. So at T naught, we're going to put down an amount of 1,000 Rand. Okay, we'll just need to try and get that line back up there. Okay, so at T naught, we have a savings account that's being opened with 1,000 Rand. Then they go on to say 3 years later he adds another 2,000 Rand. So we're talking about 3 years later, so that's time 3. Very important that you keep these consistent. If we're dealing in years, then all of these need to be in years, all of these subscripts. If you're dealing in months, then they all need to be in months, but they need to be consistent. So at time 3, he puts in another 2,000 Rand. Okay? They then go on to say that when he graduates, he makes a third deposit of 4,000 Rand. And remember, that's 2 years after the second deposit. So if you're at year 3, 2 years after year 3 will take you to year 5. So in the 5th year, he then puts in another 4,000 Rand. Okay? They want the amounts in the account at time 6, so 6 years after he has opened the account. How much is in there? All right. They also give you that your interest rate is 8.5% compounded annually for the entire period. So we've got our interest rate. Remember, we always use it in decimal form in our formula. So it's 8.5 divided by 100, which is 0.085. Now, I'm going to show you two different methods in which we can set this question up. Okay, so we've got 1,000 Rand at time 0, 2,000 at time 3, 4,000 at time 5. There are two different ways that you can actually set the question up, okay? And I'm going to show you both methods. But I'm not going to use both methods all the time, so I'm just going to stick with one of the methods. You can decide after this first example which one you like and then do it that way. They both should give you exactly the same answer if you've done everything correctly. Okay, so we're going to go through method 1 first. Okay, so the first way we're going to do it is we're going to say, okay, well, I can only add things that are at the same point in time. So if I want to find out what's happening at time 6, I need all of these amounts to move to time 6. We can't add things that are at different points in the timeline. So you can't say 1,000 plus 2,000 plus 4,000. Okay, that's 7,000. That's what he has. No. We've got to move everything to the same point in time. Once they're all at that point in time, you can then add everything together. Okay, so this is method 1. So we're going to take each of the amounts at the different times and move it to time 6. So the first one if you look at your 1,000 rand, to get it from time 0 to time 6, your interest will be added on that for a period of 6 years. Okay? So I'm going to say to work out what the accumulated amount is at time 6, I'm going to take my first amount of 1,000 rand and grow it at an interest rate of 8.5% for 6 years. Okay? Then we look at the next deposit, which was an amount of 2,000 rand. Okay, there we go. We have 2,000 rand, but that's only going in at the 3rd year. So therefore, we can't keep adding interest for 6 years. No, we say, well, going from time 3 to time 6, that's obviously 3 years. So therefore, that amount of 2,000 rand has interest working on it for a period of 3 years. So we add 2,000 times 1 plus 0,085 to the power of 3. Okay, so we've now moved the 2,000 rand to times 6. We look at the last amount of 4,000, and that is only in the savings account for a period of 1 year. So therefore, to get from time 5 to time 6, I need to grow that amount of 4,000 rand for 1 year. Okay, so we're going to say plus 4,000 times your interest rate for 1 year. Okay, now guys, what this is going to show you is it's going to show you what's happening at time 6. So all of these are exactly at the same point in time. So therefore, we can add all of them together. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's get our calculator out and let's add all of them together. So we've got 1,000 rand at 8.5%, and that's for 6 years. Then we've got 2,000 rand. It's going to be in the account and it's invested for 3 years. And then the last amount of 4,000 rand was in the account for just 1 year. Okay. And that's going to give you an answer of 8,526 rand and 5 cents. So it's 8,526 rand and 5 cents. Okay, and that will give us, through all of these different transactions, through adding money into this account at different times, this gives you the final amount in the account in 6 years' time. So that's method 1, where all you do is you move all of your transactions to the same point in time, and then you add everything together. Okay, very, very important. The other thing, guys, is remember, and I'm going to say it over and over again because it's a common mistake that everybody makes, make sure that you're working with the right compounding periods. So if you're dealing in years, then your interest rate needs to be compounded annually, and you need to have n in years. Okay, later on, next year, you'll get to a case where your compounding changes and your compounding is half yearly and quarterly and all that kind of thing. Then you've got to keep the period and your interest rate exactly the same. Okay, but for grade 10, you're lucky because most of, well, it should all be, I know some schools do it a bit differently, but it should all be given to you as compounded annually, and you should then be able to just deal with n in years, and your interest rate I also compounded annually. So they will always coincide. All right. Okay, so that was method 1, moving everything to the same points in time, adding it all together. Method 2, okay, so if we have a look again at our timeline, the next method, and I'm just going to erase everything we've got on here so that we can have a look at method 2. Okay, the other way we could do this is we could say, well, I know that I can take this amount at T0, 1,000 rand, right? I can then take it to time 3, add on that 2,000 rand after we've added that interest of 8.5% on, then take that whole accumulated amount to time 5, add on the 4,000 Rand, and then move the whole thing to time 6. Okay, so it looks like we're doing it in one easy go, but it's actually not that straightforward. With this method, in method 2, you've literally got to go from one point to the next, add, one point to the next, add or subtract depending what the question says, and then move the whole amount to time 6. Okay, but again, just depends on what you prefer. Alright, so this is now method 2. Alright, and we're working at different points in the timeline. So the first thing we do is we say, well, what's happening at time 3? So what's happening in the 3rd year? By then, you've had your 1,000 Rand in the account. Okay, you've got your interest rate of 8.5%. Alright, and then you've grown that for 3 years, so you've had interest for 3 years. And then at time 3, in the 3rd year, they add on, they deposit 2,000 Rand. Okay, so this will give you the amount in the account at time 3. You work that out. Okay, you can write it all together and do the calculations at the end, but it's sometimes I find pupils get a little bit confused, so I'm going to do it step by step. So it's 1,000, 1.085 to the power of 3. Okay, so that takes us to the 3rd year. We then add on 2,000 Rand, and that gives us 3,277.28. Now, very, very important, before I carry on, keep that entire amount in your memory or write it down. I don't mean in your own memory, I mean in the calculator memory. So keep that whole amount in the memory and then recall it when you need it, or write the entire thing down for, for all the decimal places. Otherwise, your final answer is going to go off. Okay, so make sure it will be a couple of cents off, but still it's going to be, different from what the actual answer is. Okay, so either write the whole thing down, 3,277.289125, or just store it in your calculator's memory. Okay, I'm going to write it all down for you. So this is going to give us 3,277, comma, and let's just call this back up, 289,125, and it's 289,125. All right, so when we come back, I think it's about time for a quick ad break. When we come back, I'll show you how we carry on from here. So we found the answer at time 3. We're then going to add and move along the timeline until we get the answer at time 6. Looney?
Okay, cool. Mindsetters, I've just come to realize I know what you guys are doing, but then it's just that the name, the whole DK thing, back then in my day, we never called it that. But anyway, guys, we are going to take a very short break, so make sure you don't go anywhere. We will be back straight after this break. Welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you guys are still on it. You're still on a roll with Natasha. We are doing finance, growth, and decay, this new word that I'm not used to, but it is just basically financial maths, guys. So if you didn't hear me during the show, like at the beginning, I told you guys about Curio. Go answer those 5 questions on Curio, and then throughout the whole show, like close to the end, Natasha will check out what you guys have answered, and the most wrong ones, she'll try and help you guys with those ones. Remember to enter the code. It is M10. So go onto Curio, answer the 5 questions, and press the submit button, guys, because if you don't press the submit button, your answers will be invalid. So go press submit after you answer all those 5 questions. M10 is your code, and Natasha will help you right at the end of the show with the wrong ones. Okay, Natasha.
All right, guys, so before that break, we were just discussing how we can move money along a timeline to help us add all of our deposits or withdrawals together. Okay, I've shown you method 1, where we take everything to one point in time, add it all together, and we were busy with method 2. So during the break, I went on and I carried on with the question. We worked out the amount before the break at time 3. Okay, we then take that entire amount now to time 5. All right, so we're basically moving along the timeline. We went from time 0 to time 3. We're now going to go from time 3 to time 5, which is 2 years. And then finally, in the last step, we'll go from time 5 to time 6. Okay. So during the break, I just worked out that if we had that amount at time 3, at the end of year 3 of 3,277 Rand, we can then, to get to time 5, we take that amount, we times it by our interest rate, and we add on the 4,000 Rand, and that will give us the entire amount at that point in time. So we take the 3,277, work the interest rate out, or work the interest out, add the 4,000 Rand in, and that gives you a final amount at time 5 of 7,858 Rand and 11 cents. Okay, so that's at time 5. Now we need to move that entire thing to time 6. So this is now at time 6. We take the previous amount, which was 7,858. And remember, as I said, keep the entire amount in the memory of the calculator. And we're going to move that forward 1 year. Okay, remember, you move along the timeline. The only way to move around is by using your interest rate. So this, remember, is just a straightforward application of your compound interest formula. Okay, so we're just using that compound interest formula. Each time our amount invested is changing as we're moving through different points on the timeline, and the period is changing as we're moving through different points on the timeline. Okay, so this is going to give us the value at time 6. So it's that amount, 7,858, and we're going to move that forward 1 year. And we get exactly as we should the answer we got previously, 8,526, comma 05. So you see, as I was saying, if you do it correctly, you will get exactly the same answer as you did with method 1. Okay, so you decide which method you're going to use. For the rest of the show, we can't keep doing both methods. We just won't have time to get through everything. So in method 1, we move everything to one point in the timeline, add it all together. In method 2, you sort of go in steps along the timeline. So you move the amounts to different points in time and then take the whole final thing to the point that you're looking for. All right, so let's look at another question. Okay, so here we're told that 6,500 is deposited into a savings account, and I'm going to mark this on our timeline as we go through the question. Okay, so we start with time 0. There's our timeline. We're going to go from time 0. Okay, and they say 6,500 is deposited into a savings account, so that's the amount that's going into the account at time 0. 3 years later, so now at time 3, 3 years later, 7,400 Rand is added to the account. So we add in another 7,400. Then they say at the end of 5 years, so now at time 5, they withdraw 5,800. Now guys, we use brackets to show a withdrawal. Okay, those of you who do accounting will be familiar with this, but generally when you're subtracting amount out, you use brackets to show that it's less that amount. So at time 5, the brackets around the 5,800 means that amount is coming out of the account. They want to know how much will be in the account at the end of 10 years, and they tell you that your interest rate is 11% per annum, so 11% is 0,11. Okay, so I'm going to use method 1 in order to answer this question. So in method 1, what I do is I move each amount to time 10. Okay, so each and every amount moves to that point in time, and then we add everything together. I think this is the most efficient way to do it, but if you don't like it this way, you can use method 2. So this is all happening at time 6. Okay, so we take the 6,500, remember always using our compound interest formula. So it's 1 plus the interest rate of 0,11, so it's 1 plus 0,11, which is 1,11. And that's in the account, in the savings account, from 0 to 10, and that's going to be, so from present time to 10 years later, so that's going to be for 10 years. Then at time 3, year 3, you have another 7,400 added into that account. And we work out the interest there from year 3 to year 10, that's 7 years. And then time 5, remember we're subtracting that amount out, the 5,800. So that amount is going to be subtracted out of the entire account at time 10. Okay, so if we're moving from time 5 to time 10, that's going to be a period of 5 years. All right. Okay, now that entire expression, you're just going to simply put that entire expression into your calculator and see what your final amount is going to be. So this is, remember once again, using the formula A is equal to P times 1 plus I to the power of n, and we want to know the final amount after we've changed and we've added and subtracted amounts. Okay, so let's use our calculator. So we've got 6,500, and we have interest working on that for a period of 10 years. Okay, we then add another 7,400 Rand 3 years later. So that's going to be in the account for a period of 7 years. And then finally, you saw what happened is that they subtracted an amount of 5,000, or they withdrew an amount of 5,800 Rand at time 5. So that's going to be 1,11 to the power of 5. Okay, and we end up with 24,000 Rand, 24,046 Rand and 48 cents. Okay, so it's 24,046 Rand, and let's just recall the cents, 48 cents. Okay, so let's just go over what I've done here, right? How did I get that amount? I simply said, well, if we're starting at time 0, I work out what the value of the 6,500 Rand is going to be at that point in time, time 10. I then look at the 7,400 Rand, work out what amount that's going to be at time 10. We're subtracting an amount of 5,800 Rand. So we're moving it to that point in time and say, well, how much will it be worth at that time? All right, and then you subtract and add all of the amounts at the specific time, and you get an amount of just over 24,000 Rand. Okay, so with the method I'm using, which is method 1, you can only add things together if they're at the same point in time. Okay, so that's the important thing that you guys need to take out from this section. I'm quickly going to cross over to Luni and see if you guys have any questions.
Okay. Let's just check here. Oh, okay. Titus Pocholo is asking, okay, she says, or he says, good afternoon, or I need help. If a house was bought, oh, okay, this is like a completely different. Do you want to take the example quickly?
Okay, no, well, we've got examples already, and we've still got another section to cover.
Okay.
As long as everyone is still following, that's what I want to know.
Karabo Rapolo is saying he's confused, but then he didn't like mention what question he's stuck on, so I asked him, and then I'll wait for his reply.
Okay. All right, so guys, the only thing I can think of someone being confused now, the only way they could be confused is if you didn't tune into last week's lesson, so you're not sure where we're at in this whole big section of financial mathematics. And all we're doing today is we're looking at timelines and we're looking at changing interest rates. So what I've shown you in this first section is how we can use a timeline to represent the financial information from a question and then add at different points in the timeline. So we're using the interest rate and the compound interest formula to help us add amounts together at different points in the timeline, which gets us to the final amount or the final point in time that the question relates to. So that's really all we've been doing. Before we go into the next section, which is changing interest rates, I think it might be a good point, Luni, to take a quick break.
Okay, cool. Guys, we are going to take a very quick break. Remember, if you're asking any questions on Facebook, make sure you are specific on what you want Natasha to help you with, because if you just say you're confused, then we won't understand like which part is confusing you, or if you didn't tune in last week and if you're a bit behind. But we will try and help you with everything that we can guys, so don't sweat it. We are here for you. We are going to take a very short break, so do stay tuned. Welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you guys are still tuned in and you guys are understanding what Natasha is going through. We will try to explain everything, guys, like properly, but Natasha's quite a good teacher, so I hope you guys aren't that confused and you guys are on the ball. Shout out to Apiwe, Wanele, Titus, Twanelo, and Pinaj Mokoka. You guys are tuning in, and some of you said you prefer method 1. Were you doing a method there, Natasha? Okay. We see you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Natasha, straight back to you.
All right, guys. Well, that's good because, as I said, method 1 is the one that I'm choosing to show you guys. I think it is the more efficient way to do the question because you literally do all the calculation right at the end. So it is a much better way to do the question. So I'm glad that you guys prefer that method. Okay, now we're going to move on, still using timelines, but we're going to look at what happens when you change the interest rate. Now, it's very seldom, in fact, never really, if you have a long-term investment account, that your interest rate will stay exactly the same. You'll find that interest rates will fluctuate during the term or during the lifetime of an investment. Okay, so you'll find a lot of times, especially with older people, I know that, you guys are in school, you probably haven't invested any money yet, or if you have, then well done. It's better to start at an early age. But you'll find that sometimes, with retirement annuities and pension funds and that kind of thing, money is in the account for a very, very long time. So sometimes 20, 30 years or even longer. And the interest rates in these accounts change over time. Now remember last week when we introduced the concept of financial maths, we said that 3 things have an effect on the amount in an account, okay, or the amount borrowed. And those 3 things were 1, the period, okay, so N. The second thing was the amount that you invested or the amount that you borrowed. And then the last thing was your interest rate. If your interest rate changes, then the value in your account or the value that you borrowed is going to change as well. Okay, so interest rates change over time and the change will affect the amount invested or borrowed. Now the example that you see here, I want to show you actually really a nice place for you to find this if you don't already know, is on the Mindset website. So we're going to quickly have a look and go to the website, and you'll see this on www.mindset.co.za. All of the worksheets, everything that we're doing in today's show is actually on the website already. So all of the questions we're looking at, if you want to go and have a look at it again and then follow with, by watching the videos and that, everything's there. So it's a really nice place where all your resources are. Okay, so that's where this question comes from, straight from the notes that are already on the website. Okay, so this is the first example we're going to look at based on this concept of changing interest rates. So let's have a look at the question. All right, we are told that 21,000 Rand is invested at a rate of 7.5% per annum compounded annually, but it's only for the first 3 years. The interest rate is then increased to 8.25% for the next 4 years. They say calculate the value at the end of 7 years. So we're still using method 1. The only difference is now we're looking at a changing interest rate and we're not looking at missed payments. Okay, in fact, let's just get rid of that line and use a nice straight line. Okay, so we start with our timeline once again. All right, we know that at time 0, they invest 21,000 Rand. Okay. At an interest rate of 7.5%. So with 7.5, remember you take it, you divide it by 100, you get 0.075. That's the interest rate that you get for the first 3 years. So from time 0 to time 3, the interest rate that's effective is 7.5%. However, after the 3rd year, they say that the interest rate is changed to 8.25%. So now we're going from time 4 all the way for the next 4 years. So that's going to take us all the way to time 7. Okay, because remember you stop, they said that it was for the first 3 years, and then the interest rate changes for the next 4 years. So 3 plus 4 takes us to times 7, and the interest rate for that period is 8.25%. So its I is equal to 0.0825, and that's your interest rate for the last portion of this investment. They want you to work out the value of this investment at times 7. So what amount is in that account? Okay. So you notice we've got two different interest rates. We've got to work with the two different interest rates. We're using method 1. So I'm going to say at times 7. Let's see what happens to the account. We will start with an amount of 21,000 Rand. The interest rate for the first 3 years is 7.5%. So I say 1 plus 0.075. And that's for 3 years. Okay. We then have a different interest rate for the remaining period. So for the next 4 years, we have an interest rate of 8.25%. So therefore, the interest is changing to 8.25%, and that's for a period of 4 years. Now guys, if you notice what I've done everything in one. Okay, I've taken this amount of 21,000 Rand, I've moved it to time 3, so the third year, by using an interest rate of 7.5%. I've then said, okay, well look, from that point onwards, so from times 3 to times 7, the interest rate is now changed. So I then took that entire amount, which would have been in the account at time 3, and I said the new interest rate that we've got to work with there is 8.25%. So I times that whole thing by our new interest rate, and that's for a period of 4 years. Alternatively, so this is method 1. Alternatively, what you could have done is taken the 21,000 Rand, found out what your amount will be at time 3. So using your compound interest formula, using your calculator, work out what the amount will be at time 3. Once you get that amount, you then take that amount and you say, okay, our new interest rate is that, so we then use the compound interest formula and work out the interest for the period from time 3 to time 7. Okay, so I'm doing exactly the same thing, but we're using a method where we combine everything into one line. Okay, it just makes it makes the whole mechanical aspect of working out on your calculator, and that it makes it a little bit quicker. Okay. So we've got 21,000 Rand, and that's 1 plus, in fact, we're just going to write the whole thing. It's 1.075, and that we know is the interest rate for 3 years. And we then times that by 1.0825, and that's for a period of 4 years. Okay, and that gives us an answer of 35,822. So it's 35,822,53, so 53 cents. And that will be the amount that you will have at time 7. Okay. All right, so with the changing interest rate, you're probably going to end up with a higher amount in your account. Well, not you probably, you will end up with a higher amount than if the interest stayed fixed at 7.5%. It makes sense, because if it's just 7.5% for 7 years, right, you're going to get a smaller amount, because your interest rate changes to 8.25% for the last period of that investment. It makes sense that you're timesing by a bigger number, so therefore you'll get a bigger amount in this account at the end of 7 years. Okay. Before we look at the last question for today, Luni, are there any questions?
There's just the answer here I'm confused about. Up here it says it's let's check this quick. It's 358 Rand. It's 3,582 Rand and 25 cents.
35,822 Rand, which is exactly what we got.
Okay.
Okay, so that would be right up here. It's 35,822 Rand and 53 cents. Okay,
Good.
Everyone else is following?
But yeah, everyone else is fine.
All right. Great, guys. So we're going to move on to the last part of this section for today, where we look at how your accounts, what do we do with timelines? We're going to combine everything together and give you one nice example to end things off. Remember, the notes, as I showed you, they are actually on the website. So if you want to be really, really efficient and you want to take maths by the horns, as it were, then simply go into the website, have a look at the questions, answer them. If you have any problems, then you can let Looney know and then we can help you. All right. Okay, so this is now question 2 from the notes if you are on the website. Okay.
Can I just quickly ask you a very short question? Sorry. Mabog or Tink is asking, wait, Natasha, we subtract the withdrawal, right? So what about the interest it would have earned from the accumulated amount at the end of the financial period?
Okay, that was a question we did way before the break.
Okay.
So we did subtract out the interest because remember we moved that 5,800 Rand to the other point in time, 2 times 10. The only way you can move it is by using that interest rate formula. So we took into account the interest on that 5,800 Rand. So we actually moved it to the point in time where we could then include it with the other transaction by using our interest rate. So we didn't just forget about the interest.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Okay, so as I was saying, this question sort of brings everything together that we were looking at today. Typical exam type of question. Let's have a look. We're told that a mother invests 9,000 Rand in a savings account when her 2 daughters, the N is missing there, when her 2 daughters are 7 and 10 years old. All right. She gives each of them 15,000 Rand in the year they turn 21. The interest rate is 11% compounded annually. How much will she have left in the account after she has given the youngest daughter 15,000 Rand? Okay, so at first it seems a little bit complicated because there's so much going on. There's 2 different kids. The one is 7, the other one's 10. They're both getting money when they're 21 years old. It all seems like a bit much to sort of digest and to just get an answer to. So this is when we need a timeline. Okay, typical example of when you're going to have to use a timeline to help you to answer a financial calculation. All right, so let's put the information we've got onto a timeline. Okay. So we'll draw our timeline once again. And let's have a look at what's going on. So mother invests 9,000 Rand into a savings account. Remember, we're starting at the present time. Everything's happening now, okay? She puts 9,000 Rand into the savings account. So that's the first thing that she does. And at this point, when she's putting this money into the account, the one daughter is 7 years, and then the other one is 10 years old. So obviously the younger daughter is 7, the older daughter is 10 years old. She will then give each of them 15,000 Rand in the year they turn 21. Now, let's have a think about that, right? She's put this money in, say, today, 2013, August, right? And she's got 2 children, one is 7, one is 10. She's going to give them 15,000 Rand in the year they turn 21. Now, obviously, it doesn't matter what year you're starting in. It's going to be the same amount of time because the 7-year-old is going to take 14 years to get to the age of 21, at which point she'll get the 15,000 Rand, okay? And then the 10-year-old is going to take 11 years to get to the age of 21, and at that point she'll get 15,000 Rand. Okay, so there's 2 separate things going on, but we can represent it on one timeline. Okay, so the 7-year-old, they wanted to know how much will she have when the youngest daughter, who's obviously the 7-year-old, gets her money of 15,000 Rand. Okay, so as I said, 2 different things, but one timeline. We know that the first daughter is going to get her money at time. Remember, she's 10 years old. She's getting the money when she's 21. So 21 minus 10 is 11. Okay, so she's getting her money in 11 years' time. The oldest daughter is then going to get her money. Remember, she's 7 years old. She's going to get the money when she's 21. So therefore 21 minus 7 is 14. So she's going to get her money 14 years from now. Okay, the youngest daughter, 14 years from now, she'll get 15,000. The oldest daughter, 11 years from now, she'll get 15,000. So at this point in time, 15,000 Rand is going to go off the account. Remember, we use brackets to show that it's subtracted. And then at this point, time 14, another 15,000 is going off the account. Okay, and the interest rate that they've given us to work with here is 11%. So it's for the entire period. We don't have a changing interest rate. So your interest rate, 0.11. Okay. First thing we need to do is to work out the first time she gives the oldest daughter money, how much is going to be left in the account. But obviously at that point in time, at time 11, the money that she originally invested is going to have interest on it. Okay? So at that point, at time 11, all right, that 9,000 Rand is obviously going to have interest on it. Okay? So we take that 9,000, we say times 1,11 to the power of 11. At that point, we then subtract 15,000 Rand. Okay, because that's the money she is going to take off at that point in time. So it's 9,000 times 1.11 to the power of 11, and we're going to subtract 15,000 Rand. So at that point, she's got 13,365,82. Okay, so that's what's in the account, and I have rounded off there. That's what's in the account at time 11. We're then going to take that amount, see how much of interest she gets until time 14. So 14 minus 11 is now going to be 3 years, and we then subtract the other 15,000. So we're going to say 13,365,82. We've got interest on that account for a period of 3 years, and then we subtract 15,000, and we get, so it's that times by 1.11 to the power of 3, subtract 15,000, and she's going to be left with an amount of 3,279 Rand in that account after she's given both her daughters their present of 15,000 Rand. Okay, guys, remember you can go over all of this on the website. All the notes are there, and if you have any questions and queries, just let us know from there. But I think that's all we're going to have time for this show. So okay. Cheers.
Just a quick question from Apiwa. Is this the last lesson on finance?
Yes.
Because he's asking what happened to inflation. So Apiwa, sorry, it is the last question. It is the last lesson, sorry. So Mindset is with all of that said. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you again, same time, same place, next week. Remember to learn more and learn extra. Bye.
Or the use of the timeline is to look at the first question. Right, so this is the first example. We are told that a student opens a savings account with a deposit of 1,000 Rand. 3 years later, he adds another 2,000 Rand. And then 2 years after the second deposit, he makes a third deposit of 4,000 Rand. They say calculate the total amount in the savings account after 6 years if the interest rate is 8.5% compounded annually. Now guys, if you look at this question, you'll agree there's so much happening. I mean, he starts with a deposit of 1,000, he then waits for another 3 years, he puts in another 2,000 rand, then 3 years after that he makes another deposit of 4,000 rand. So there's so much going on, and if you were just trying to do all of this without the use of some sort of aid, like the timeline, it can become really confusing. So let's use that timeline and let's try and put down all the information that we have from this question. Okay, so we're going to draw the timeline. All right. Time in. Okay, time in being some of the information you'll be given, like 7 years, 6 years, and so on. Time in will be the point in time that you've been asked to calculate a certain financial question. So the little subscript beneath the T, you can see in the first one, I've got T, subscript 0. That tells you the point that you are in on the timeline. Okay, on the top of these, you'll then mark your amount. So for example, if you had started with 1,000 rand being deposited, you'll put that at time 0, and maybe something was happening at time 3. Maybe another 1,000 rand was added. You'd put that on at time 3, and then maybe something happened at time 5. Okay, for example, if you had a withdrawal, we'd depict that on the timeline. So what you would do, as I said, is literally read your question, see what information you've been given at the different points in time, then use your timeline to mark off that given information. Okay, we always start the timeline at time 0, which is the present time, and then we then take it to time n, which is the point in the question where they've asked you for some answer. Okay, so the best way to illustrate the timeline,
it's like a huge community. So remember guys, we also have Curio, so go on to Curio and answer all those 5 questions, and throughout the show, maybe like close to the end, Natasha will check them out, give you guys clues and help you with the ones that you got wrong. So with all that said, Natasha, let's have the lesson.
All right, Luni, just building on from your Curio, guys, remember that your code, you do need a code to answer the grade 10 questions, and your code today is M10. Right, Luni?
Yes, M10. M10, guys, is your code. So answer all those 5 questions, and Natasha will help you close to the end of the show.
All right, great. So today we're going to be looking at finance, and remember we are carrying on from last week's lesson. So if you're feeling a bit lost with the compound interest and you can't remember the formulae, it's really because you probably missed out on last week's show. So last week we just covered the basics. We looked at what the compound interest formula was, what the simple interest formula was, and straightforward applications. Today what we're going to do is we're going to look at things that a lot of you have trouble with, and most of the questions that we get are always about these 2 things. The one thing being using timelines, and you use timelines to represent your transactions when there's lots and lots of transactions happening, like withdrawals and deposits at different points in the year. A lot of people tend to get confused. So we're going to be looking at timelines, and we're also going to be looking at how a changing interest rate affects the amount either invested or borrowed. Okay. So the first thing is, what is a timeline? Well, a timeline is really just a visual summary. So everything that's in your question is summarized into a timeline. Okay, so really what we're doing in a timeline is summarizing financial information, and that will then help us to work out the calculation. It's especially useful in questions, as I said before, where we have several transactions. So we're looking at deposits, withdrawals, changing interest rates, and all those not so nice kind of things. That's when we're going to use a timeline. Okay, let me show you what a timeline looks like. All right, so it really is, as the name says, it is a line. Okay, and when we draw the line, what we do is we represent the information that we've been given at the beginning of the question at time 0. So we start at time 0 and we go all the way to
What's up, Mindsetters? It is 4 o'clock on a Monday afternoon. Grade 10s, you should know by now that it is Maths for you. I am Looney, and joining me in studio is Natasha. How are you, Natasha?
I'm very well, Looney. Great to be here with the grade 10s, once again looking at finance.
Great. So guys, you heard it. We're doing finance, growth, and decay, part 2, whatever that means. Yes. So guys, don't forget to hit us up on Twitter at LearnExtra. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/LearnExtra. Remember, you can download the show notes, the videos, the schedules. Check out all the awesome products we have available here at Mindset. And we want to urge you guys, to urge your teachers to go onto our website, guys, learnextra.co.za, and apply. Go to the jobs and apply for all the products that we have and all the different things that we're doing here at Mindset. Urge all your teachers to check under jobs and submit their applications. We've got amazing things for the teachers as well. We're not just focusing on you mindsetters, because team mindset